Hey everyone. With all the terrific games that came out this year, I had a really hard time narrowing my Game of the Year list down to just a top 10 like I usually do. So we're going to dig down, and we're going to do a top 20 this year, broken up into two halves. This video is going to cover 20 through number 11, and as if doing a top 20 wasn't enough, I also want to rattle off some honorable mentions that just sat on the periphery. Games like Guilty Gear Xrd Revelator, Riggs, Pokken Tournament, Pokemon Go, Killing Floor 2, Hyper Light Drifter, and Super Hot. With that out of the way, let's get on to the list proper, starting with number 20, Bravely Second. Bravely Default came out in the midst of the lamentable Final Fantasy XIII trilogy. While Final Fantasy was struggling with an identity crisis, Bravely Default proved that Final Fantasy's roots were still pretty fertile. Bravely Second is that game's sequel, and it's mostly an incremental improvement over the original, but for a foundation that was that solid to begin with, incremental improvements are really all you need. The game is full of characters with heart, a big wide world that's strange and enticing enough to keep me wanting to turn over every stone, and a unique battle system that I adore. In fact, it's one of Bravely Second's biggest strengths. It's turn-based, and you have the option of taking a single turn, or defending to build up multiple turns in a row, or blowing a bunch of turns early on for huge burst damage that makes you wait several rounds before you can take another action. Managing all of that adds some real spice to a tried and true formula. Plus, there are so many intricate details and quality of life conventions, too many in fact to list all of them off here, so I'll just say that Bravely Second is more than a worthy follow-up to Bravely Default. Rhythm games don't usually engage you with atmosphere all too often, let alone one that's so stifling and aggressive. Playing Thumper feels like taking a stroll through a dark alley in the dead of night. There's this lurking sense of uncertainty and unease. You get a real sense of hostility from the atmosphere. At times, Thumper even feels a little bit like a horror game. The game's tagline is rhythm violence, and that violence is entirely implicit in the mood, but it's also so thick and tangible. Thumper is fast, it's intense, and the world around you will melt away while you play because it has a way of commanding your undivided attention. It's by sheer luck that I, on the brink of exhaustion, staggered into a PAX panel about this game's 10 years of development. But boy am I glad I did, because I would have otherwise never learned about Owlboy. And Owlboy is, in a word, a weird game. But it's a good type of weird. The game is about Otis, a mute owl who's the screw-up of his village. Shame and scorn are heaped upon Otis in the beginning, and that makes you root for him all the harder. And then you use your talons to pick up a dude with a gun. And the game becomes an exploration-focused puzzle game with shmup-style combat. And you know what? It all works. It works really well. Games in development hell for so long sometimes have the counterintuitive problem, when they finally do come out, of feeling somehow rushed. But Owlboy genuinely feels like 10 years of love and care were put into making it the best game it could be. A while back, I played a fan-made Attack on Titan browser game, and it was kind of bittersweet because while the game was amazing and the swinging mechanics were a dream come true, I was absolutely positive that no fully licensed Attack on Titan game would ever approach that. Licensed anime games don't exactly have a great track record, and the kind of swinging mechanics that you would need to make it feel right are exceedingly rare in the history of games. So much to my welcome surprise, Wings of Freedom came out, and it's everything I could have hoped for. The swinging controls are an order of magnitude more simple than those of the browser game, but you're still placed firmly in control, and the feel of swinging at Mach speed, slashing a Titan's nape, and boosting has only improved. That exhilarating sense of speed as you use your mobility and your agility to outmaneuver Titans, that's what I wanted most, and Wings of Freedom delivered that. Some years ago, Human Revolution did an outstanding job of bringing Deus Ex out of its Invisible War-induced stasis. But it was a game that begged for small improvements here and there, and that's exactly what Mankind Divided provides. It loses some thematic resonance in shifting from the heavily graded black and gold art style, but it makes up for it with a much more impressive overall visual punch, and the pace at which augments are unlocked is better. Your character progression choices aren't hamstrung by god-awful boss encounter design. The world itself feels much bigger and more alive. The game feel of nearly all of Jensen's actions has been punched up, and the game continues its thoughtful exploration of transhumanism. Not to mention these one-on-one kind of conversation-based boss fights are really cool in concept. Mankind Divided is the kind of game that a sequel should aspire to be. I'm kind of a VR fanboy. The thing about it is that it transports me back to feeling like a giddy, wide-eyed child amazed at what games are capable of. The problem with VR is that it currently lacks games that feel like finished products instead of impressive tech demos. It's that precarious spot that motion controls found themselves in the last generation. Although I think VR's immersive potential is boundless in comparison to the awkward disconnect posed by motion control. All of this is to say that Until Dawn Rush of Blood is one of the first VR exclusive games that I've played that feels like a full game. Even as a very short rail shooter, it feels complete. And more importantly, it's fun. And I love rail shooters, and VR roller coasters are a special kind of magical in being able to induce a feeling of actual motion. Plus, it's got a fantastic visual imagination exploding with disturbing imagery. If any of that sounds even remotely interesting to you, you deserve to give Rush of Blood a shot. Discussion of Street Fighter V is often weighed down with so much baggage due to the state that the game released in, and I'm not excluding myself from that. I've been a vocal critic of the game. Sparse doesn't even begin to describe the amount of content that was there for launch, or wasn't rather. It was bare bones. Survival mode was a chore. There was no arcade mode. There was no story mode. Rage quitters weren't being penalized. The excessive amounts of input latency for a fighting game went unchecked for months. And despite multiple periods of server stress testing before the game's launch, the servers were a mess for days when the game launched anyway. That sounds pretty dire. It sounds pretty grave. Why is Street Fighter V on this list, let alone as high up as it is? Well, truth be told, if not for all of its problems, it would be much higher. But at its core, Street Fighter V is a sublime fighting game that departs from the slower pace and the high mechanical complexity of Street Fighter IV. Street Fighter V is a lot simpler by comparison, and it has a greater focus on fundamentals and rewarding smart aggression. Gray damage, stuns that come easier, higher damage outputs across the board. It's a much faster, more aggressive game. It actually harkens back closer to Street Fighter II or Street Fighter III. And it's not without its mechanical flourishes either. The V system does a really excellent job of further distinguishing all of the characters from one another. Art style is much improved over the days of Street Fighter IV, and the cast is pretty well rounded with plenty of representation from each game in the series, and the newcomers are all mostly great from a design and kit perspective. It pains me that there's so much to criticize about all of the game's ancillary elements because at its core, Street Fighter V is so damn enthralling. Straight off the bat, Unravel is one of the most beautiful games that I've ever had the pleasure of laying my eyes upon. Just look at this. Look at this creamy depth of field, the beautiful snow in this winter level, the crisp golden autumn lighting in this other level. It is a visual feast. Like a sorcerer cast a spell on a perfect photo to bring it to life. But Unravel, for all of its beauty, is more than a pretty face. It's also a game filled with smart physics puzzles and mechanics based around the conceit that Yarny is a yarn doll knit to life by some warm, loving grandmother. He can tie a string to rappel, he can use it to create pulleys, he can create trampoline-like surfaces, and if you don't managed how his string is distributed, he unravels, literally. It's a neat gimmick that results in a lot of delightfully inventive puzzles. It's cute, it's heartwarming, it's clever, and it's one you should absolutely check out. Clustertruck is that tremendous sense of relief and accomplishment you feel right after you pull off something that you know you shouldn't have gotten away with, when you snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, and it's that stretched out over several hours. It is a constant fly by the seat of your pants, butt-clenching good time. I play this game and I am just howling with joy while I play, cackling to myself. It is a blast. And really, there isn't that much to say about it other than that. It's designed to elicit a very particular kind of excitement, and it does a phenomenal job of doing so. Furi is the ultimate example of cutting away all fat, drilling down on one core thing, and doing that one thing exceptionally well. Yes, there's a story that's being told, but it's kind of on the periphery. It's window dressing to these 10 bosses who you fight exclusively. The loop of the game goes, you fight a grueling knockdown, drag-out fight. You get a slow walking sequence to kind of ratchet down the tension and give you a little bit of release, and you get some exposition along the way. And then you change scenery and you do it all over again. There are no puzzles, there's no platforming, there's no stealth segments, there's no ads or minions to fight. It's not necessarily a contemplative or a meditative journey from boss to boss. And being so bare bones, Furi has to nail everything that it does. And it succeeds. It succeeds swimmingly. Its neon visuals and design by Takashi Okazaki pair brilliantly with the game's thumping electronica to set the atmosphere for each endurance run of a fight. Your kit is comprised of sword swings, a chargeable dodge, some flashy projectiles, and parries. Really good parries that are polished to a blinding sheen. And the bosses. Each boss is an elaborate mix of close quarters, stylish melee, and hectic bullet hell. They grow ever more complex and cool as you progress throughout the game, and what will most likely happen is that you'll blow through the first few, and then you'll start hitting wall after wall. But that experience of learning these long, difficult fights feels like an elaborate dance that you have to memorize the moves to. And because of how sharp everything feels, the pursuit of mastery is never a frustrating experience. Oh, and look at this perfect parry. Furi has game feel broken down to its most basic molecular parts. Furi is a game of focus and excellence, and that is reflected in its design philosophy. So that's it for number 11 through 20. Let's play a game. Try to predict my top 10 games of the year in the comments, and feel free to share yours as well. The full top 10, including my pick for Game of the Year, will be up tomorrow. Hope to see you then. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take it easy. Have a good one.